And with that phenomenal performance to kick us off this morning, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome to the stage the president and CEO of the Greenlining Institute, Deborah Gorman, who will give us some opening remarks to ground us for the day. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Ronnie and Mercedes.
Hi.
Thank you for being our fabulous host today. Really appreciate it. Well, it's our distinct pleasure to welcome you to the Greenlining Institute's 28th Annual Economic Summit. We are pleased that you could join us virtually this year for an exciting 2 days of insights and conversation on racial equity. It's hard to believe we already had a full year since our last summit. We had no idea the pandemic would last well into 2021. This past year, we experienced the intensity of these overlapping crises and the ebbs and flows of hope and sorrow as the pandemic and racial injustice grabbed and demanded our focus, sometimes well past our levels of exhaustion. Our communities coped with stress and tragedy of COVID, the ongoing police abuse, and growing violence against Asian Americans. We have been through so much together. It was Vladimir Lenin who said, "There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen." We witnessed many historic, maybe our decade of moments. Boundary-breaking November elections to the small acts of courage demonstrated by so many who were voting for the first time. We felt the excitement of the first African-American and Asian woman being elected as vice president. And last week, we saw 2 women seated behind the president of the United States during an address to the nation. 2 down and 1 to go. The election of Raphael Warnock to the Senate from Georgia in a continuing legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., giving one party control of all 3 government branches. The new administration, who also ushered in groundbreaking appointments to the cabinet, including Deb Haaland, the first Native American woman as Secretary of the Interior. The appointment of Rachel Levine as the new Assistant Secretary of Health at the Department of Health and Human Services, the highest ranking openly transgender government official in US history. Ever. We saw Darnella Frazier, the teenager who recorded George Floyd's death on a video that undeniably documented his killing. Then 12 jurors who stood up in a moment and convicted a white police officer for the murder of a Black man. So we chose momentum as this year's theme to highlight the tremendous acts of courage and organizing that we witnessed across the country and the optimism that we carry to make a major leap forward in achieving racial equity. Our decades of these mounting weeks, we've seen evidence today of a future in which our communities are healthy and thriving, where lives are valued and equity isn't just a slogan, but a reality. The pandemic raised the temperature, the tensions and the internal contradictions of an old social order that had become too desperate and too chaotic. We, the people, had had enough. We were broken open and we are fighting to reach change. Decades upon decades of accumulated grievances suddenly come to the surface in a matter of only weeks. However, as history has shown, the outcome of a revolutionary period at the edge of chaos can be either positive or negative. We also know that those who were most oppressed over the last couple of centuries were also those who successfully, creatively, and unapologetically overcame all the chaotic episodes, the 1960s, the 1860s, the 1930s, all those chaotic periods of dark times in the American history where our forefathers and our foremothers could have collapsed. But in every case, we emerged stronger and wiser and not weakened. We know too, the familiar backlash that comes swift and hard, a backlash of the big lie, a lie that tried to deny a legitimate election, the backlash of January 6th insurrection, which attempted to undermine our democracy, exposed how deep the sickness of our country runs. We continue to be confronted with gross injustice with the more recent introduction and passage of a growing wave of voter suppression and anti-trans legislation, we continue to face the atrocities of policing on Black and brown communities with scant example of accountability and justice. And Asian American violence continues across the country, reminding us of the long history of anti-Asian sentiment. Now is not the moment to despair. In the words of Alice Walker, my activism is my rent for living on this planet. We are now beginning to see growing glimmers of hope in a number of vaccinations and the return to connection that we all missed so much last year. Can I finally take my mask off? Can I give you a real hug? A new governing era has begun to swiftly answer the call to action on COVID recovery, climate change, and infrastructure investment, especially care infrastructure needed in our communities. Today's good news is that we are a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, and non-binary America in all walks of our life who have begun to create a different country, a country rebuilt from the ground up in many foreseen and unforeseen ways. It is a time of deep change not only in our economic and environmental lives, but in ourselves. The future we seek won't happen all by itself. It will take all of us. We hope these 2 days of discussions and panels and interactive sessions and networking will not just inform, but inspire us for all the work ahead. If you want to have a life worth living, a life that expresses your deepest feelings and emotions and cares and dreams, you got to fight for it. So what's going to help you pay some rent, fight the good fight, move your decades forward in a couple weeks will be this event. Did anyone watch CNN's Kamal Bell's recent episode of United Shades of America? Kamal's recent episode called, Defund the Police features Fabiana, Alicia, Latifa, Kat, London, Pastor Mike, all filmed at the center of the universe, Oakland, California, my hometown. We have many of those very activists here with us. How cool is that? We brought together some of the country's leading thinkers and movement leaders that have been building this work for decades and bringing the imagination and innovation to push for radical change. You will be in our virtual summit spaces with people who dream it, live it, and have paved the way. So you'll hear from Nsé Ufot of the New Georgia Project, who will tell you how she is so excited about a whole new generation and ecosystem of sophisticated operatives, her words, who come from communities where the organizing is happening. And Elisa Garza, founder of Black Lives Matter and Black Future Lives, who will shape a dialogue to help us explore effective strategies and lessons from a variety of movements that have been galvanized. She has a new book out too. Then we will bring to the stage the renowned author of Caste and the Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson, a gifted storyteller who will captivate us with the universal human story of migration and reinvention, as well as the unforeseen hierarchies that have divided us as a nation. We have some incredible breakouts. We will be hosting, discussing some landmark community-led transformations being piloted across the state of California through the Transformative Climate Communities Program, TCC. And that work is helping to achieve clean mobility equity. And then we'll have a conversation where I'm hosting with partners from the private sector and major institutions on how they're trying to meet the moment. So that's day one, meeting the moment. Day two, galvanizing the next wave of change. We will hear from the incomparable Dr. Shirley Weber, the first Black female Secretary of State in California, a San Diego Democrat with Arkansas roots, whose well-lived life teaches us to refuse to back down. You will be challenged to choose between some outstanding breakouts: algorithm equity now, why regulating AI is an urgent racial justice issue, the case for reparations and closing the wealth gap, and just and equitable decarbonization, BIPOC community stories. Then we will move into equity labs. Look, in the midst of the worst economic downturn in decades, this is our time to build a new economic system, a radically new system. You will be part of a roundtable conversation with racial equity leaders and learn tools to put equity into practice where you live. Or you will have a chance to spend time with a somatic coach to remind us that self-care is also an important part of this movement. We will close the summit asking how we can reimagine a society that is truly built upon principles of justice and equity, a radical reimagining. How do we dream big, and what steps do we take now to apply the practice? So we will sit with Angela Glover Blackwell, a famed policy link, and Michael Tubbs, who in 2016 was elected mayor of Stockton, becoming the youngest and first African-American mayor in that city's history. So this is not a passive summit. We encourage you to engage in networking, interactive activities, chats, go to the expos, go to the photo booth, make some memories. We want to also take this time to acknowledge the backbone of the Greenlining Summit, our board of directors. You can see the names of our board of directors here. We appreciate all their dedication and commitment that have moved this organization forward for almost 30 years. And to our sponsors, I want to say a special thank you. I mean, I really want to say thank you, because nothing that is said here is censored or scrubbed or modified in any way. All the speakers are invited to bring it, all of it. We are inspired and encouraged by the very fact that everyone gets to bring their full selves to this event. So yes, thank you to the sponsors. Our gold sponsors, Wells Fargo. Our silver sponsors, US Bank, First Republic Bank, and Bank of the West. And our bronze sponsor, Bank of America, Chase, and Union Bank. And there are so many more that have helped make this reality for you. Go check it out in our virtual program. So with that, let's begin. I am so pleased to introduce our opening fireside chat to help us set the tone for the day. I have the honor of introducing our moderator, Dr. Manuel Pastor. Manuel is a distinguished professor of sociology and American studies and ethnicity at the University of Southern California, and currently directs the Equity Research Institute at USC. He has been a great co-conspirator within academia in supporting social movements and the drive for systemic change with his research and writings. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Thank you, Deborah. Glad to be with you. Glad to be part of this opening conversation. And I do want to move quickly to talking to Ufot. I am one of her biggest fans in the world, and it's just a delight to be in conversation with you. I'm just going to frame this up a little bit and then introduce you and ask a first question. You know, like many people in the United States, I actually have now fully vaccinated. And I know that I'm supposed to thank scientists or Biden, but actually, thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Georgia, for changing the administration so that it would actually get an effective vaccine rollout. I've got 2 children. They both got STEMI checks. My son in particular, who is a musician, whose backup career is as an actor, never exactly a career building strategy. Thank you, Georgia. And I really want to thank Deborah for saying that speakers could say anything they wanted. So we don't have a raving lunatic, racist, fascist president. Thank you, Georgia. And a large part of that has been the work of the New Georgia Project and Ufot. And I know that you'll spread credit to lots of others as well, but let me just say something about the New Georgia Project, which is registered, I think now 500,000 voters who've been participating. And Ense is remarkable herself. She was born in Nigeria, raised in Southwest Atlanta, graduated from Georgia Institute of Technology. She has done some pretty amazing things recently, but I didn't realize that you were the executive assistant director for the Canadian Association of University Teachers. Yes. That is a story that we need to explore over beers one day, over a barbecue like we have in the past in South Los Angeles. So I'm just so delighted that you're with us. I want to start with this question. A lot of times when the media sort of, something happens and they go, oh my God, it's an overnight sensation. So they go, wow, Georgia, it changed.
Right.
We go, the New Georgia Project, how amazing. This has been a long march, both for the New Georgia Project and for you. Can you talk about that long march? Because I think sometimes people see a sudden success and they don't realize the hard work, the planning, the discipline, the strategy that went into it.
Right. I mean, well, it starts with two young women. There's a woman named Stacey Abrams in our state who became the minority leader in the Georgia state legislature. So the leader of the Democrats, because they were the minority party. And one of my very best friends, Lauren Grow-Wargo, who eventually went on to become Stacey's campaign manager in her historic bid to become America's first Black woman governor. And, you know, as they were sort of surveying the landscape, and this will be made relevant as I continue, but, you know, the first couple of years were spent sort of trying to understand the state of play. What was preventing Georgia from living up to its full potential? This multiracial, multi-ethnic state that's seen as the crown jewel of the South. What is preventing it from, you know, why is our minimum wage $5.15 below the federal minimum wage of $7.25? Why are they building 2 new nuclear power plants in Black communities and communities of color where there haven't been any new nuclear power plants built anywhere in the United States in 30 years? Okay, we have this new president. We have this Affordable Care Act. Why would our legislature leave billions of dollars on the table when Georgians are actually dying from lack of access to affordable health care? And it came down to power. That we did not have enough power to stop the bad things from happening, that there was not enough power to influence the people in our legislature. So how did we go about building it, right? And so it started from when Stacey became the minority leader in 2011, and then to 2013. The first sort of iteration of the New Georgia Project was a Obamacare Navigator program, an Affordable Care Act Navigator program. There were Black folks, Latinos in rural Georgia who had worked 20, 30, 40 years and never had employer-provided health insurance. So we went to go knock on their doors and say, hey, you know, here's this opportunity. Can we help you, et cetera? Basically taking our learnings from civic engagement and applying it to signing people up for healthcare. The plans were trash. We didn't expand Medicaid. People didn't want it. So we stopped lying to the people. And we said, what is the thing that we're going to have to actually do to build power so that we have elected officials who listen to us, who know what our priorities are? So we started registering people to vote. And to date, we've registered over 500,000 young people and people of color in all 159 of Georgia's counties, right? Because one of the ways that they are able to dismiss us is, oh, this is an urban thing, like code for Black, code for Latinx, right? Yeah. This is an Atlanta thing. Also, you know, code for Black and people of color. But we are in every single county in Georgia. That we've built a network of churches, synagogues, and mosques that's over 1,100 congregations that join us in doing this work. That it has been lawsuits, it's been criminal investigations, it's been all kinds of disparaging comments about who we are and what we're doing and what our aims are. It has been a decade plus march towards a pipeline, a generation, a cohort of policymakers and elected officials who know what our community's priorities are, who are accountable to our communities, and who see themselves as co-governing with the people of Georgia, who see themselves going to Washington, D.C. And to Atlanta to do the people's work. So when you talk to Senator Ossoff and you talk to Senator Warnock, they will tell you that we are co-senators with the people of Georgia, and we have a Georgia agenda that we are taking to the United States Senate.
You know, what thing, a lesson I would really lift up from that that's really important is the combination of impatience about inequity and patience about a strategy that's going to take some time to actually, you know, bear fruit. Because I do think that we often have a very presentist notion of how we're going to change things dramatically, We need to change things dramatically, but we also need these long strategies. The other thing I think that's quite remarkable about your story, you know, in the book I wrote about the transformation of California, State of Resistance, I talked about the difference between moving to the middle and moving the middle. I think one of the things that's remarkable and say is that you didn't elect Doug Jones or Joe Manchin.
No.
You elected two of the most liberal senators in the Senate from Georgia.
Yes.
What, like, I mean, I saw you snap your fingers, this idea that you don't need to be mushy, that you need to actually offer vision. Does that make sense to you? How did you come to it?
It absolutely makes sense to us. Listen, I cannot be more proud of sending a 33-year-old Jewish kid to the United States Senate from Georgia, especially when the majority of the Senate was born before there were even 50 states, right? So that's a big deal to me. And a pro-choice pastor who is the third person to manage to lead Ebenezer Baptist Church, since Martin Luther King was assassinated. So there's Martin Luther King, two pastors in between, and then Reverend Warnock, right? And so that's a big deal to us. They have proven their commitment to the people of Georgia. I think that one, we live in Georgia, so forgive me for using some very Georgia specific examples. I mean, I am a Diet Coke drinker, and I will tell you that real Coke is better. I just can't drink it because I need to watch my sugars, right? And so the idea that there are going to be sort of, Republicans or conservatives who get to be brought back, who all of a sudden, you are going to make the right argument. You're going to cut the perfect digital ad that's going to turn them into a progressive, right? That you're going to craft the perfect mail piece that finally sort of cuts through. And that's not the case. Stacey likes to say that we are not trying to convert Catholics to Islam. We're trying to get Baptists just to go to church, right? So we are looking for people who share our values, who understand what our communities need, and who are joining us in the work that we're doing. If it's civic engagement, if it's around the issue organizing and the community organizing that we're doing, if it's running for office, that there are more of us than there are of them. Right? And we're looking for our people and creating a container, creating a home, creating a place for people to get down with us.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about who are your people. One of the last trips I made before the pandemic shut down travel was to Atlanta, part of the Lead Local effort, to just kind of see what y'all were doing there. And I think from the outside, I'm trying to kind of complicate this for the people who are listening. There is a sense that, well, demography is destiny. But you got plenty of states, Texas, for example, where the demographic shifts haven't produced the political outcomes. So when you talk about your people, you're talking about communities of color, to be sure, but how do you complicate that in terms of mobilizing the right kind of voters to the polls?
Our people are, you're right. Demographics do not automatically equal destiny, that we have to organize for the conditions that we want to live in, that we want to raise our children in, that, we want to, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. And so we work to organize our demands, right? Because Georgia is changing so rapidly, we see this as an opportunity, right, to intervene. Because the truth of the matter is, so Georgia's going to be the first state in the Deep South with a white minority, right? And that, like, people of color is a political identity, right? Like it's Black folks, it's Black Americans, it's Caribbean immigrants, it's African immigrants, it's Central American immigrants, it's South American immigrants, right? It's Puerto Ricans who are Americans, right? So it is a political
And
identity.
the AAPI community, it was very important as well.
and the AAPI community, which includes our like far left progressive Indian homies, and our far right conservative Chinese homies, right? And everything in between, right? And so that it's a recognition that it's a political identity and that we need to understand where our intersections are. We need to understand that, it's nothing about us without us, right? And that B, that this is a practice, that this is a muscle that we are going to have to build because we are going to be co-governing as a plurality, as a majority, and that, again, there are no assumptions. Listen, the shift to the right has been seen in like cis Black men, the ideological shift to the right. So again, there are no permanent conditions, that we are constantly organizing resources, organizing our people, and organizing the demand, the political and the policy demands that we need at this moment so that our families can have the sort of Georgia and the country that we deserve to live in.
Really important point about how identity isn't something you just kind of carry in that's immutable. It's actually constructed, and it's constructed politically. And I say this as someone who, again, for a very long time has worked on that people of color identity because of it being something that, in particular for Latinos, pulls us away from the temptations of whiteness and understand the alliances that we need to have with Black Americans and Black people and others of color and progressive whites to really move this forward. One other topic I really want to explore is something that's taking a lot of your time right now, which is the reaction. One of the things I think that was a kind of big mistake in the Obama presidency was people thought, oh, great, we elected Obama, Black president, it's all going to be good. We need to go home and kind of relax and let him make change. And of course, the forces of reaction, fueled by rage in the right and fueled by Koch brother dollars, rose up in the form of the Tea Party and really derailed the agenda that was there. What you're seeing in Georgia right now is people recognizing the success of the New Georgia Project and trying to strip away the right to vote. Right. Can you talk about that reaction, what you're doing, and the corporate campaign that you're involved in?
Right. Listen, every expansion of rights, I think that we have seen in this country has been met with a corresponding whitelash, corresponding backlash led by white people and white angst. And it is something that we anticipated, but also B, I don't think we anticipated the swiftness and the severity of it. And I guess how well resourced and coordinated and organized that it was, right? So think about flip Georgia, elect Biden Harris, 9 weeks, we make 7 million phone calls, send 4 million text messages, knock on 2 million doors in the middle of the pandemic. But everyone had their NGP mask on, so we were good. And then send our first Black man to the United States Senate, first Jewish man to the United States Senate. The next day, we found out Ossoff was successful at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, they were putting their feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk and killing people inside the Capitol. And then immediately saw almost 400 anti-voting bills being introduced in 47 states across the country, 47 out of 50 states. And so for us, it was a couple of things. One, it was a communication challenge, right? That we needed to make sure that people understood why this was happening. This was happening because white people, Black people, brown people, and young people got together and communicated the vision for the Georgia that they wanted to see through, the America that they wanted to see through their votes. And we were able to stop voter suppression because that didn't stop, right? Yeah. It's just that we had anticipated it, we planned for it, we organized around it, right? There were still stupid long lines at the polls in 2020 and 21, people that were illegally and improperly purged from the voter rolls, et cetera. So we needed to communicate to people yes, this was a small victory, we're gonna celebrate it, yay. And brace your feet, plant your feet, flex your knees because the white lash is coming, and it did. And we needed to connect the big lie, right? So the big lie that powered the 3 unsuccessful lawsuits that not a single court in the land found that there was widespread voter fraud, is the same big lie that powered the Capitol insurrection, that made people feel like, oh, wait, maybe, something is wrong. Like maybe it's not just a rhetorical issue, like this is violence and we should do something about it. It's also the same big lie that's powering these 361 bills that have been introduced in 47 states. So it was a communications effort for sure. Number 2, we found in Georgia that there was $7 million that was given to the sponsors of these anti-voting bills. And so we have out-organized the Chamber of Commerce because it is an imperative. We want to say that voter suppression is bad for business. And we are demonstrating that. Coca-Cola knows that. Delta Airlines knows that. American Airlines in Texas knows that. And so, while we had gotten hundreds of CEOs to sign letters to be in the New York Times, et cetera, it was only a week and a half ago that the Chamber of Commerce actually put out a statement opposing HR 1 and HR 4. And so, again, I think that it is anticipating the white lash. I think that it is thinking about ways, your battlefields, right, where we are going to intervene. In court, we filed a lawsuit within 30 minutes of the SB 202 becoming law in Georgia. The court of public opinion, again, challenging these narratives. And so it's press, but it's also our social media. Go check out our Instagram. Don't check out our TikTok. I do some really bad rap parodies. I don't need people to see that.
Everybody's rushing to that TikTok right now. Come on, you just sold a bit.
Right. But, the court of public opinion, actual courts, I think also just organizing and boots on the ground, tons of direct actions that are making it clear that it's not business as usual. And so, there was a protest at the Coca-Cola Museum that's here in Atlanta, at the airport, Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta, busiest airport on earth, obviously Delta counters on Delta counters. And so, people need to know that Delta was funding voter suppression and we wanted them to stop it, right? And so now, not only have they paused, they ceased all PAC donations to, everyone at this point, but, many of them are, evaluating how they are going to contribute. Because there's this sense of like, both sides do it. Oh, my interest is corporate profits. So, we give to Dems, we give to Republicans. We are not at the place where both sides do it is a sufficient enough analysis that this version of the Republican Party has fallen off the rails.
Yeah.
And it needs to be addressed, that you cannot fix what you have not faced. And so we are at this place where we are very truthful, very vocal about what the pain is that we're experiencing and what we think the solutions are.
We only have a few more minutes together. There's so much what you just said about the need to combine the electoral strategy with the legislative strategy, with working in the courts, with a culture or narrative strategy, but also really key with a corporate strategy too, to sort of leverage the economic power. This is the professor trying to lift up lessons for the students online. Just maybe a minute. What do you want the story of Georgia to be when people like me come back 10 years from now, and having written the story of California and gotten tired of California, although who could get tired of California, is what do you want the story of Georgia to be written 10 years from now?
I want the story of Georgia to be that we were at the vanguard, right? That we were the tip of the spear for the effort to drag America kicking and screaming into its stable but progressive future. That we showed the country what a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-generational, people-powered movement looked like. That we are able to overcome centuries of racialized oppression, Jim Crow, economic oppression, again, to show how folks can come together and organize a demand. I think that Georgia is a story of organizing, community organizing, electoral organizing, faith faith-based organizing. Again, we are in the Bible Belt, right? We're in the Black Belt, the Sun Belt. And so again, while we are well recognized for, registering over 500,000 young people and people of color, again, I do that in community with churches and synagogues and mosques, that there are progressive pastors who understand civic engagement. So yes, I think I want people to understand that it is a people-powered movement that is going to drag the country into its future and show and rearrange the map, challenge the narrative about red states and blue states, and defy conventional wisdom about what is politically possible in America.
That's fantastic. I'm going to close with a story, which is that in the 2016 election, the day after Trump got elected, I came into my office the next day and looked at my staff, mostly much younger, and they were looking to me for, I don't know, a veterano's words of advice and encouragement and inspiration. And I said to them, well, I think it's going to be worse than you think, which turns out to be not inspiring, but absolutely accurate. The day after the insurrection, and in particular the coupling of the Georgia victories and the insurrection, I faced nearly the same staff and said, I think it's going to be better than you think. And I think so because the face of fascism and racism was revealed. It's the reaction we're going to have to fight against. But the cause for hope and optimism and the ability to move the middle and to really move into the kind of Georgia of the future that you were talking about, that was revealed that morning as well. And thank you, Georgia. Thank you, NSA. I have so much love for you, so much respect, and so much hope for you, for Georgia, and for what you're going to do for the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Let's hand things over to whoever we hand things over to.
Thank you so much. First of all, power concedes nothing without a demand.
That's right.
And you cannot fix what you cannot face. Come on, sis. I was eating a sandwich off stage, and I had to put the sandwich down and clap because that was amazing, Dr. Pastor and NSA. Thank you so much.